Black and white footage of Soviet tanks rumbling across the Friendship Bridge. Close-up of a Soviet soldier's exhausted face, then cut to a Mujahideen fighter raising his rifle in victory. Rapid montage of celebrations, then suddenly, silence. A burnt-out building in Kabul. February 15, 1989, the last Soviet soldier crossed the Oxus River. 10 years of war were over, but nobody knew that the bloodshed hadn't ended. The Soviet army was gone, the communist government was still in power, and those who had fought together against the Soviet Union just yesterday were about to turn their guns on each other. Within just 3 years, Kabul would be reduced to ruins. This is the story of how Afghanistan, after winning a war against a global superpower, threw itself into civil war. But to understand the fall, we must first understand the victory that was never truly won. Archival footage of Mohammad Najibullah in military uniform, speaking confidently to crowds, quick cuts of Mujahideen fighters celebrating in the mountains, firing weapons in the air, animated map showing Kabul surrounded by rebel strongholds. The West expected Mohammad Najibullah's Soviet-backed regime to collapse within weeks, but the man they called the Butcher of Kabul proved to be a survivor. Soviet aid was still flowing into Kabul. His intelligence apparatus, the Qiyad, was ruthless and effective, and his army, though battered, had inflicted several heavy defeats on the Mujahideen, maintaining control over the major cities. Footage of destroyed villages, refugees walking along dusty roads with their belongings. Archival photos of Mujahideen leaders, Hekmatyar Masood Ismail Khan. But this victory was an illusion. Afghanistan was already carved up by warlords. The Mujahideen were never a unified army. They were a patchwork of ethnic groups, tribal militias, and ideological rivals who shared only one common goal: the end of communism. In the south, the Pashtun warlord Gulbuddin Hekmatyar dreamed of absolute power. In the north, the Tajik commander, Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Lion of Panjshir, controlled his own separate fiefdom. And in the west, the Lion of Herat, Ismail Khan, ruled like a medieval prince. These were not allies. These were rivals who were just waiting for the right moment. That moment came when the power that had held them together, the Soviet Union, simply ceased to exist. News footage of Boris Yeltsin, Soviet flag being lowered in Moscow. Dramatic archival shots of Afghan soldiers abandoning their posts, deserting in uniforms. In December 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. But the real turning point came earlier. In January 1992, Boris Yeltsin's new Russian government suspended military and financial aid to Najibullah's regime. Without Soviet support, the Afghan state was suddenly hollowed out from within. The army began to disintegrate. Soldiers deserted in large numbers. The patronage networks that had kept the system together began to unravel. Footage of Najibullah looking tense and isolated, speaking to his advisors with grave expressions. Dramatic shots of the UN headquarters in Kabul. By March 1992, Najibullah knew the end was near. On March 18th, he announced his willingness to step down for a UN-supervised interim government. But the warlords had no interest in a peaceful transition. The UN process had focused on mediating between the mainly Pashtun leaders in Kabul and Peshawar, largely ignoring the northern commanders who now held the real military power. Footage of Massoud's fighters entering Kabul, but not triumphantly, cautiously, warily. Crowds of civilians in the streets, short-lived celebration. On April 16th, as Najibullah tried to flee from Kabul airport, he was stopped by forces loyal to Abdul Rashid Dostum, the Uzbek general, who had once been his ally. Najibullah was forced to take refuge in the UN compound in Kabul, where he would remain for the next 4 years. The following day, Mujahideen forces entered the capital. On April 28, 1992, Sibghatullah Mujahideen was installed as president of the new interim government. Kabul's liberation celebration was short-lived. Behind the smiles, a new war for power had already begun. The fall of the government didn't end the war, it only changed its shape. Intense footage of rocket attacks on Kabul buildings, massive explosions. Civilians running through streets, dust-covered children crying. The cityscape transforming from a functioning capital to a war zone. The fall of the communist government didn't end the war, it restarted it. Within weeks of the Mujahideen takeover, the fragile alliance shattered. This wasn't just a battle for the capital. This was a battle for the massive stockpile of weapons the Soviets had left behind, and for the future of Afghanistan itself. Footage of Hekmatyar's fighters firing artillery from the hills surrounding Kabul. Masood's forces taking defensive positions. Animated timeline showing the rapid escalation in April-May 1992. On April 24, 1992, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar launched his attack on Kabul. He wasn't fighting the communists anymore. He was fighting the very same Mujahideen he had once fought alongside against the Soviet army. Hekmatyar's forces bombarded the city from the surrounding hills. Masood's forces, now allied with President Burhanuddin Rabbani, who had replaced Mojadedi in June 1992, held the presidential palace and the airport. The Afghan people who had dreamed of peace were now trapped between two fires. Montage of destruction, burning buildings, wounded civilians in overcrowded hospitals, children with vacant stares. Archival footage of the Peshawar Accord. Signing, leaders shaking hands reluctantly. By May 1992, international mediators attempted to negotiate a ceasefire. The Peshawar Accord attempted to establish a power-sharing arrangement among the factions, but it was a piece of paper over a wound that would never heal. Footage of shifting alliances, Hekmatyar meeting with Dostum. Maps showing the complex web of alliances and betrayals. The alliances that followed were bewildering in their complexity. Abdul Rashid Dostum, the Uzbek commander who had betrayed Najibullah, commanded a powerful military force in the country. In early 1993, Hekmatyar allied with Dostum against the Rabbani Masood government. Dostum, who had once been Najibullah's ally, then Masood's ally, had now switched sides once again. Meanwhile, Iran worked to unite Shia Hazara factions, including Hezb-e Wahdat, and broke the alliance between Dostum and the Hazara forces. The city of Kabul became a chessboard of shifting loyalties. Devastation montage, Kabul 1993 photos. Destroyed neighborhoods, mass graves. Statistics overlay. Thousands of civilians killed in 1993. Between February and May 1993, thousands of civilians were killed in rocket attacks and street battles in and around Kabul. Hekmatyar's bombing of Kabul during the civil war from 1992 to 1996 caused thousands of deaths and earned him the nickname the Awa, Butcher of Kabul. The historic city of Kabul, once the center of thousands of years of civilization, was being reduced to rubble. And then for a brief moment there was hope, a peace agreement signed by the warring parties. But hope in Afghanistan had become a dangerous thing. Footage of the Islamabad Accord signing ceremony. On March 7, 1993, leaders sitting tensely. Hekmatyar looking suspicious, surrounded by heavily armed guards. Archival photos of the destroyed neighborhoods, widows, orphans. On March 7, 1993, the warring factions signed the Islamabad Accord. Brokered by Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, the agreement was designed to end the conflict once and for all. Under the accord, President Burhanuddin Rabbani would remain in power for 18 months. Gulbuddin Hekmatyar was designated to assume the office of Prime Minister. A new cabinet was to be formed, with power shared among all factions. Footage of Hekmatyar refusing to enter Kabul. Slow-motion shots of empty, destroyed streets. But Hekmatyar remained in his command center in Charasyab, on the city's outskirts. He demanded the removal of Masood from the government, a condition Rabbani was unwilling to accept. By April 1993, the agreement had collapsed. On April 24th, Hekmatyar launched a major assault on Kabul. The fighting continued until mid-May. Archival footage of the aftermath of attacks, search and rescue, bodies being pulled from rubble. Montage of Masood, Dostum, and Hekmatyar looking tired, paranoid. A second attempt at peace, the Jalalabad Accord, signed in May 1993, also failed. The same disputes over power sharing, the same mistrust, the same violence. Footage of millions of refugees crossing borders into Pakistan and Iran. By the end of 1993, Afghanistan had descended into a hellish stalemate. The Afghan state had fragmented into a patchwork of warlord-controlled territories. Millions of refugees had already fled to Pakistan and Iran. The country that had bled the Soviets dry was now bleeding itself. And from this blood-soaked chaos, something new was about to emerge. Dark, moody shots of a madrasa in the Afghan countryside. Young boys studying religious texts, some holding weapons, learning in makeshift classrooms. Slow zoom to Mullah Omar's face, archival photo or depiction. While the warlords were fighting in the capital, something else was growing in the south. In the midst of this chaos, a group of religious students emerged from the outskirts of Kandahar. They called themselves the Taliban, the students. Their leader was Mullah Omar, a former Mujahideen fighter who had lost an eye fighting the Soviets. In September 1994, he founded the movement with a small group of students from local madrasas. Footage of people in Kandahar welcoming the Taliban as liberators. A Taliban fighter speaking to a crowd, promising peace and justice. Archival images of the rising Taliban movement. The Taliban promised order, justice, and an end to warlord rule. They drew their membership from Pashtun, students who had grown up in refugee camps in Pakistan, educated in religious schools that preached a strict interpretation of Islam. For a population that had been bombed and rocketed for years, this new voice offered a compelling alternative. Final montage: the rubble of Kabul, the innocent faces of children, a slow transition to the Taliban flag rising. Map showing the rapid expansion of Taliban control from 1994 onward. By 1995, they had taken control of large parts of the country. On September 26, 1996, Massoud and his forces withdrew from Kabul. The next day, the Taliban entered the capital and established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, and Najibullah, who had remained in the UN compound for 4 years, was captured and hanged from a street corner. The civil war of 1989 to 1993 had created the conditions for a new, darker era to begin. This was not the end of Afghanistan's tragedy. It was simply the beginning of the next chapter. Drone shots of the Afghan mountains, beautiful, timeless, but scarred. Slow fade to black with ambient sounds of wind, and credit text begins to appear. Afghanistan has been called the graveyard of empires, but it also became the graveyard of its own people's dreams. When the Soviet army left, Afghans inherited a fractured state and a war between factions. When the Cold War ended, their country was forgotten, left to the mercy of warlords who destroyed much of what they had once fought for. The Soviet army had left Afghanistan. The Cold War was over. But for Afghanistan, the war was not over. The war had simply entered its next chapter.